Now, there's one more thing that I want to cover, and that's going to be fixing a few errors that we haven't really touched yet. So if I come into my bubble editor, you can see we have these issues. Some of them we're not going to pay attention to. But we're going to scroll down, and you'll notice that this Google Geocode API key is missing, or it wants us to add it. And that's because we're trying to use our current location, but there's really no way to know our current location without interacting with Google Map API keys or another form of Maps API. For our case, we're going to be using that Google Geocode API as well as Google Map, and I'm going to show you exactly how to set this up, as it's pretty easy. Now, of course, if you get lost, you can always click on the documentation and see what it says about maps. So if we scroll down, it actually tells us exactly what we need to add and step-by-step on how to do this. So you can see we have geocoding, places, geolocation, and maps JavaScript. We want to actually add all of these. And to do so, you have to come over to your Google Cloud Console. So if you just typed in Google Cloud Console on Google, you would find it in one of the first links, and then you'd be met with your dashboard. So I believe you'd land on a page like this, and there's a bunch of stuff going on, but don't worry about that. All you want to do is come up to the top left, and we'll create a new project. Let's call this Airbnb project maps. And for organization, we'll just leave that blank and go ahead and create. Now we have this new project, and we're actually able to use any of Google's APIs and interact with our Bubble application using them. So for instance, if you wanted to interact with Gmail, you have access to that. Google Calendar, anything that Google has an API for on the Google Cloud, you can then use and interact with your Bubble application. So pretty neat. I do recommend diving into this a bit more to see what's available, because there's so much out there that we can't cover it all. But let's go to our Maps APIs. So let's go to the project we just made, Airbnb Project Maps, and let's search for what we need. So what did we need? Well, we needed that geolocation. So let's type in geolocation, and let's not leave a space. So geolocation API, come on. All right, there you can see we have our geolocation API in the marketplace. X out of that. And you'll see this enable button. So let's go ahead and click enable. Now it might prompt you for billing, but if it doesn't, then you can just go ahead and select enable. Now, once you enable it, you're going to be able to see it now says manage, and you can do stuff associated with the API, and it will tell you that the API is enabled. Now, if you want to further dive into exactly what these APIs do, you can go ahead into their documentation, click on documentation, and it will tell you everything about this API, such as the data it collects and receives and displays back to you as the user when you call this API. So you're going to want to add all 4 of Bubble's recommended APIs onto your Google Cloud. So we have places, geolocation, which we just added. So we can add geocoding and maps. Now, once you've added all your APIs, assuming you've added all 4 or 5 if you wanted to include time zones, you would next need to set up your API keys. So let's come over here to our navigation menu. We'll scroll down to API and services, and we'll go to credentials. Now, in here is where we're actually going to create those API keys, or a way to connect with our application. So we'll go into create credentials. And actually, if we head back over to Bubble's documentation, it's going to tell us exactly how to use these API keys. So you can see here, it says create and set up your new keys. Now, if you go over here, it says create new API keys in the create credentials button. So we need to call one client, which it says right here, and one server. So we head back over to our Google Cloud. Let's go ahead and set those up. We come up to create credentials, and then you select API key. So we're creating our API key. And let's go ahead and copy and paste that, and we'll close. Now that we have created that, let's actually click on API key 1 and change a couple things about it. So we know we need a server and a client. So let's make this a server API, and the next one will be our client. Now you see we have a set an application restriction, meaning who is allowed to use this API on our behalf. Well, if we leave it to none, anyone, including me, can get access to your API key, use your services that you pay for free. So thank you very much for making that public. But we're going to restrict that so that does not happen to you. We're going to do websites. Now, there's a couple different options we're not going to cover, but websites is going to be the main thing you're going to be using when restricting, meaning which URL is actually allowed to interact with this. So we'll go ahead and add a website. And for our purposes, we're going to come back to our bubble editor. And we'll go ahead and preview. And you just want to take this bubble, or whatever you named your bubble application, ending in apps.io. And then you can come back and paste that in here. And then go ahead and add an asterisk at the end. That basically means that any URL starting with this can access our API. So after bubbleapps.io/directory, that could access our API. /index, that could access our API. Anything starting with this main URL has access to that API. So you can put it on any page in your application. So we'll go ahead and click done. Then we can come and select save. So we'll go ahead and save that. So now we have our server API key. Now let's make our client API. So we'll come up to create credentials, select API key, wait for it to load, of course. And then we have our new client API. Let's go ahead and do the same thing we did with our server. We'll go ahead and edit our API key, name this client, and we want to restrict it to our website as well. So we'll add our bubble URL, which we can come back, copy and paste from here, and go back and paste it in. Now make sure you end with an asterisk. If you don't end with the asterisk, again, you won't be able to use it on all your pages, just your main domain page, wherever that is. So make sure you add that asterisk. Click done, and now we can go ahead and save that. So now we have both our API keys. Let's go ahead and copy our server one. Let's come into edit, we'll copy that. Let's go back to Bubbles docs and see which one this has to go into. So scroll down here, it says go to your settings, general, yada, yada, yada. So copy and paste server key into Google Geocode API. Okay, let's go to our bubble editor. We have Geocode API, and we have our server. So we copy and paste that in there, and then we know that client is obviously going to be Google Maps. So come back and get our client API key. Go ahead and show key, copy and paste. Come back to our editor, and go ahead and paste that in. And that is literally all you have to do to get your current location and interact with Google Maps API key and the Geocode API key. Just like that, we have access to our current location. It's really that easy when these things are all set up for you. You're basically just copy and pasting data and then putting it into your bubble application. Thank you, Google, for making it so easy to do that. We appreciate you. And again, you can use anything associated with Google API on their cloud platform. Everything and anything they have access to, you can go ahead and search all their APIs. There's like thousands of them. And you can see what they do and see if you have a use case for them. That way you don't have to go out and build your own custom solution. Because what are we about here? No code. So we've reached the end of lesson 3. You've done so good so far. Getting this far is an insane feat just in and of itself. Now you have to go out there and start building these applications in the real world. But I want to finish off with some concluding thoughts and maybe some reassurance for you, as well as some advice moving forward once you've finished this course. So with that, I will see you in the conclusion video.